Why is recorded in front of a live studio audience.
How was your Halloween? What did Captain go as?
Captain had a few costumes. He was Superman.
Of course.
He was a bat. He had a Halloween sweater.
Wow.
Yeah, he kind of mixed it up.
Warren had one costume, and it
Mm.
was from last week, but I think it was so good it kind of deserves to be shared here. Let me skip through our Russell and Ron Mail photos. Found a bunch of pictures of Jerry Lee Lewis flipping people off, so that will be our post for
Oh,
this Friday's
very nice.
Tumblr page. This is Warren's costume. He went as the curtains.
Oh, nice. There
Yeah,
he is.
yeah.
Yes, very, very nice. How Scarlett O'Hara of him.
Yeah, exactly.
This is Why, with your hosts, Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling.
Oh, hey. Hello.
I can't see him. There's a big sign over him.
Oh,
I get that a lot.
Why can't I see you?
I don't know. How did you get into that concrete cubicle?
I know.
Well,
She came to say hi.
I sort of,
Oh.
I have to tell you what I've been hearing when I got into this
Laughter of children.
wonderful, wonderful things about Miss Heidi.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
go
too. I
figure.
thought, well, they look smart.
Yeah. All right. Well, didn't see that one coming. So how was England?
England was one of the best trips there ever. It was really a magical, unexpectedly magical time. And with hindsight, you know, the way it worked out with Clint getting COVID and having to
Right.
go home, I don't believe Heidi and I have had that kind of one-on-one time since she was in diapers.
There you go.
A long time.
And you
And I,
got to spend most of the last prime minister's term with her in her home country, which is lovely too.
she wasn't there very long, was she?
No, I think you guys literally were there for about 2/3 of her term.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's such a classic what King Charles said. Oh, you're back again. That was he greeted her. Did you hear that?
No.
Yeah. When she went in for her first audience, which they do monthly with the sovereign, he said,
Right.
oh, you're here again.
Oh, no.
Wasn't very good. And of course, the public took it.
Yes. Did you see marbles?
Did
Elgin or
I
otherwise?
see marbles? I am so in love with those marbles. I can't explain what it is about them, but I walk in that room and first of all, they're magnificently displayed, you know,
Mhm.
and I know the story. I know Elgin had a firman from the Turks, but he helped himself to anything that wasn't really loose. He made it loose.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the way we have displayed it, it's absolutely like stepping into another time and another world. They're so beautifully displayed. And of course, around the sides, they're doing the Pan-Athenaean procession, which they did once a year. And they made a cloak every year for the statue of Athena, which must have been incredible.
Was she cold?
Tall statue. The statue is inside of the Parthenon.
So she was warm. She wasn't like cold.
Oh, well, she was made of
Why did she
marble.
get it?
Oh,
Maybe she was cold. Yeah, that could be
she
it.
made of marble. Maybe she was frigid. But
That's for sure.
Frigid's not good. So
no,
yes,
not
I
good at
got to
all.
I got to visit those marbles, and it was really funny because there was a woman who asked if I would take her picture, and she said to me, you know, I walk in here and I just feel so rejuvenated and relaxed. And I looked at her
Okay.
and I said, that's amazing. You know, that's what I experience when I walk in here. So I'm not the only one to hear the magic.
True. You hear the
Yeah,
calling.
it's
What
true.
about Jane Austen's house?
Oh, dear Lord.
That was
I have seen
really,
some photos.
well, that was really fun. Heidi and I
No,
had
it looked like you guys were having a blast.
we had a great time. We had a bit of an aha moment because they had a basket full of costumes with bonnets.
We've seen it.
Oh, yeah, don't worry. Yeah.
Well, when we first looked at it, we were a little bit concerned that maybe these bonnets might not be clean and that there may be things living in the
They
bonnets.
might not be clean.
Well,
Please.
we thought maybe there were, things that jump onto your hair, but we
I
decided.
almost can guarantee there are things that would jump onto your hair.
So we took a little risk and it turned out to be just fine.
Yeah,
But,
once you
and then
guys get out of the quarantine, that's great.
did Heidi tell you about when we went to the Mary Rose and this very British woman was going to teach us about Henry VIII?
I don't believe so.
Well, this is a really great story because
I'll
Heidi,
be the judge of that, but continue.
well, Heidi and I are proud Anglophiles, and we
Yes.
learn as much as we can about England and their history. So there's this massive statue of King Henry VIII, and we're having our picture taken by it. And this
As one does.
as one does, this very proper British lady walked up and said, "Oh, girls, let me tell you about Henry VIII."
Here we go.
To which my girlfriend of 35 years said, "Lady, these two know a lot more than you do, and they could educate you full stop."
So improving international relations wherever you go.
Jersey, Connecticut, it's all.
They all look the same.
Or I don't know, maybe it is in Connecticut, but we can't talk about it and you
That's
just blew
true.
some
That's-
major like.
Lady, you just gave away the secret.
I know, see, now I spoiled it. He started it, but I completed it.
Yeah,
That
you're the one
happens.
We're very hush hush here.
Yes.
So before we really get into it, we edit this all later. So if you want to go back or rephrase anything,
Or
go
take out
for it.
my,
Or we can just-
indiscretions.
Yeah, we can redact all of what Heidi said throughout the whole thing.
Let's just go live. Let's throw it out there and see how people.
Perfect.
Yeah, what's the worst that could happen? Oh, that? Okay, well,
Oh,
maybe
wow.
yeah.
Was it Kissinger that said that there's no bad publicity?
Yes.
Him or Lee Harvey Oswald.
Amazing how
One
that
of them.
turned. Let's just, it's that whole here, hold my beer meme. You know?
Exactly. Well, I've got a litany of hold my beer stories. If you'd like.
Oh,
I-
excellent. Of course.
How did you get into being in such a place where you could get those stories?
A long series of monumentally bad career choices got me here. No, I grew up literally a lifelong car guy. Right, grew up around cars, grew up around racing, got involved in local racing, not as a driver but as a mechanic. Made my way up to the professional level, worked for Porsche and Mazda professional road race teams, and then got the calling to go into the military. My stepfather was very influential in my life, was a former soldier. So I went into the military, and during that time, I had the opportunity to train under a gentleman, Tony Scotti, who is from Massachusetts, and started what was at that time in 1974, the world's first evasive driving school, and became the preeminent evasive driving school in the world. So I was a product of that school. And so after I left the military and was doing some contract work down in Latin America, had a couple incidences where I realized how tremendously valuable that training was. And so from there, became a client of his in the private sector, started sending a lot of my people that worked with me and for me to him, and we built a very strong friendship. And so when he retired, semi-retired, let's say, he's still out there on social media and whatnot at 82 years old. So when he retired, I had the opportunity to carry his legacy forward. So in 19 years, almost 20 years ago now, in 2003, we started Vehicle Dynamics Institute to take that methodology and take it forward.
This is so off the subject and unimportant to what we're discussing. But what was the graduation ceremony for the evasive driving course like? I imagined it was very fast and grandma couldn't get near the stage.
No, it's to call this ceremony might be a little much, but yeah.
Okay, fair.
Because of our clientele, obviously very closed courses, we often joke around though with the students, like, okay, let's cue pomp and circumstance, get out your caps and gowns. But it's pretty mundane affair.
I know that, like you said, you can't really name past clients or students, and respect that. If you want to come up with nicknames that rhyme with that name, that's fine. We can do that. But what is the most common kind of, I don't know if attack is the right word, that your clients are looking to repel, for lack of a better term?
Well, at the risk of oversimplifying it, it's attacks when they're in the vehicle, right? So evasive driving becomes critical. And there's historical data that supports this. In 1989, the Rand Corporation did an exhaustive study called Future Trends in Terrorism, and they pointed to the fact that that the majority of attacks against specific individuals or against targets that are sort of representative of other targets, right? People who represent, say, the United States or some other foreign government working out of an embassy, even celebrities and public officials. The highest likelihood of a security incident occurring is when they are in or around their vehicle. Then you fast forward to 2007, Gavin DeVecker, very prominent in threat assessment and threat mitigation methodologies. He and two of his employees, the late Tom Taylor and Jeff Marquardt, wrote a book called Just 2 Seconds. And as part of that, they did another exhaustive study. Tony and I worked with Tom to provide some of the data on the attacks. But what their study found and was published in this book is the vast majority of attacks against what they termed a public figure, so somebody who's high profile, elected official, a business executive, even workers at non-government organizations in certain regions of the world, they're most likely to be attacked while they are seated or riding in their vehicle. In fact, statistically speaking, from 1960 to mid-2007, the majority of attacks against specific public figures, according to their study, occurred while they were seated or riding in the vehicle, 43%. Now, superimpose that over today's numbers, and even the average person is facing an increased risk due to carjackings of being attacked in their vehicles. So that recognition, that understanding has driven, to a large extent, first Tony's business, right, the Scotty School of Defensive Driving, and now Vehicle Dynamics Institute's business.
Wow, that's terrifying.
Yes.
This is why we have him on.
Numbers.
I know.
There's some other terrifying numbers we deal with too,
Oh,
though.
great. No.
Which is accidents, right? The more likely scenario, even for the majority of our professional students, the more likely scenario is they're going to face an accident. Now, fortunately, the techniques, the evasive driving techniques, when properly trained and applied, that would work against an ambush, an armed adversary, will also work against somebody who's facing an accident. Say the proverbial soccer mom who drove through a stop sign, and now you still have to deal with limited time, limited distance, and limited maneuvering space. And then another number that's, as a parent, that's even more frightening to me is car accidents are still the leading cause of death of young people in this country, age 17 to 27, more than guns, drugs, sexually transmitted disease, and gun violence combined. But where are the public service announcements on how do we address this issue? How do we deal with this problem? It's frightening.
Yeah. Do you ever have someone come in who's been, obviously trained, phenomenal at every aspect of the job, but they're just a terrible driver and they're never going to be able to do this?
Yes, and it's my job to let them know, and oftentimes their employers. The vast majority of the time, over 98% of our students, in fact, are sent by their employers, and those include over 200 of the Fortune 500 companies, 91 Fortune 100 companies, more than 24 ultra high net worth family offices, literally every major government agency, every branch of the military sends some of their people to us. And the reason for that, one of the drivers of that, no pun intended, is because of the methodology that Tony designed and developed and we've evolved, we can actually objectively, scientifically, legally defensibly evaluate driver performance in what we term behind the wheel emergencies. So we're measuring their performance against the car's known capability given certain conditions, which we create the conditions in our driving exercises. So if they're not meeting our standard, we have a remediation process. If we go through that process and they're still not able to meet the standard, it's a handshake and thanks for spending some time, as we like to call it, in Carjackistan, right? So it's touchy. A lot of our clients send people before they get their final offer. So they get a conditional offer of employment. They come to us. They've got to meet that target of performance. Now, having said that, we have very few that we have not been able to get to that level of performance. And that comes mostly from experience, right? Tony's experience and now our combined experience. But there are those that then we have to say, look, your journey here with us has come to an end, and send them back to their employer. Now, some of them may move into other positions. Others may no longer have a position or not receive that final offer. So we take our role in that process very seriously. We will give a student every opportunity we can to complete the course and meet the standard. In fact, we had one young gentleman, very knowledgeable security practitioner, working for an ultra high net worth family in New York. He'd been working residential security for 5 years, had sold his car because he couldn't afford to park in the city, right? So he hadn't driven for 5 years. They decided to move him up and put him in a position as a driver. The protection team lead and I are professional acquaintances. He said, look, this is the situation. Let's see how he does. And so he didn't meet the standard on day one. We worked with him that evening. We worked with him the next morning. Another group of instructors worked with him. He still wasn't there. So we had to dismiss him from the program. However, what we then did was one of our instructors, over the course of about a month, went into the city, drove with him 2-3 times a week for a few hours. Then we put him through our accident avoidance program. Then we put him back through the protective evasive driving course and got him where he needed to be. So we do take our standard very seriously, but we do take our commitment to our clients to train their drivers to the best of their ability very seriously.
Does that training, what is that split between sort of offensive driving or kind of proactive, being ready for a situation, and defensive? What is that kind of split? What's the breakdown of that?
Okay, so defensive driving is really the things you do to avoid an accident. And they're absolutely valid. Things like following distance and, using your headlights when, it's dusk out.
That guy from New York, he wasn't using turn signals, was he?
No.
Yeah, okay, there we knew it. All right.
Now we know.
Sorry, but continue.
New York, of course.
Yeah.
Right.
So they've got defensive driving, which works really well as long as everybody on the road is driving defensively, and there becomes the quagmire, right? Because not everybody is. So our experience tells us if not everybody's driving defensively, then there may be a point when you have to drive evasively, where you have to deal with limited time, limited distance, limited maneuvering space, find a hole and put that vehicle through it. And so the difference in evasive driving is now you're confronted by that behind the wheel emergency. In defensive driving, you're trying to avoid it. And you always should, because the last thing you want is to have to use these skills because they're perishable. If you're not driving evasively all the time, your ability to drive evasively diminishes, particularly about a year out of training. We have the luxury of having a 78% return rate of our students, some of whom have come back now, well, almost 20 years. We've seen students 19 times. Some of our students have come back every year because their employers or they themselves value the skills and they know they're perishable. So after a year of being away from the training, your skill is considerably less. So defensive driving is absolutely critical, but you also have to be aware, have that level of situational awareness that allows you to react very quickly to those problems that may be caused by other drivers. I mean, accidents, look at accidents, 90% of accidents on average, roughly, plus or minus a few points here and there, according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, are the root cause is driver error. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be you as the driver. It could be somebody else's error that now puts you in that challenging, potentially fatal position.
Either in that situation or in a more professional setting, can you teach somebody to remain cool under pressure? And is that breathing? Is that just preparation, having been through this before? Are you playing Yanni? What's the thing that kind of just keeps everything from escalating?
It's all of the above, my friend, all of the above. So one, you can train it, right? So a significant component of the evolution of our programs has been human performance, right? And so we do a lot of research. We do a lot of work on everything from breathing, autogenic breathing styles, to lower your heart rate, to developing more more acute peripheral vision, without getting too technical, right? You're always taking in imagery in your peripheral vision, but the faster you're driving, the narrower that field of I guess you would call it clear or cognitive vision is, because the mind wants clear images. So we have tools that we use. We use a Dynavision visual motor reaction time training system. We use Blaze pods, which are typically used for training athletes, but we use them to increase the acuity and decrease the response time in our students' peripheral vision. And then, of course, putting them under stress, whether it be time compression through the exercises. Some of our professional students will experience ambush drills where we're using pyrotechnics and paintball so that they're experiencing the effects of an ambush. And then it's practice, practice, practice. And quite honestly, the thing in our experience, and I've been ambushed twice in vehicles, a number of our instructors have had similar experiences. The key really is confidence. Knowing you have the confidence to get the job done, and then you buffer that stress. Oftentimes you'll hear the term stress inoculation. We don't necessarily buy into the idea of inoculating yourself against stress, because you will eventually feel the impact of that stress. Even if it's when the cortisol is bleeding off in your bloodstream and your hands start to shake, you're going to feel it, but you can buffer that stress, right? So if we can buffer the stress and give them the confidence, we know, we can prove demonstrably that their chances of surviving a behind the wheel emergency, whether it's a potential accident or a deliberate security incident, go up exponentially. And keep in mind, because of our global footprint, a lot of the students we're dealing with, an accident, right, has the same security implications as an attack. Because if your vehicle stopped, you are now a target. So it's important for us not only to teach in both contexts, but even from the human performance aspect of what we do, making sure the techniques that we're applying and that we're teaching our students to apply will work both in a potential accident, what we would call an everyday emergency, or a security incident.
How often do you have to evolve those techniques because of the changes happening in like the way, I don't know, I'm in Detroit and we're just discovering roundabouts in Detroit, but, which is hilarious. It's a motor city, but how often do you find you have to, exactly, that you have to evolve things and change things because the trends are changing in driving?
Honestly, for us, it's a constant process. The vast majority of my time, Jay Aretino, our chief instructor, even Tony Scott, even though he's semi-retired, he does a tremendous amount of research, is evolving the program. So it's not only roads and road conditions, traffic patterns, it's also automotive technology. Things we trained on, right, 19 years ago, and there's all sorts of things that you can do in our realm that are quote unquote sexy, right? So J turns, which is this reverse 180. You've seen it in a lot of movies. They're really cool. I've been told it's the most fun you can have in a car with your clothes on. I made the in private, of course.
Yes. Agree to disagree.
but it's also irrelevant. It's irrelevant because you look at where our students are operating and driving. You look at the types of vehicles all the way up to armored SUVs. You're just not doing that kind of maneuver safely. And remember, our job as professional security drivers or executive protection providers is to minimize risk. So it's a very risky maneuver. Now you add in automotive technology, advanced driving assistance systems,
Right.
such as collision avoidance, even electronic stability control, can impact the vehicle's ability to have the driver perform that maneuver to the point that they may not be able to perform it. So we take a very straightforward view of training, and that's why would we waste valuable training time on techniques that are likely not going to be useful, and now with modern technology in vehicles may not even be applicable, and if they are, they're only going to increase the risk. And if you're doing that maneuver, you're already in a high risk situation. Right. So why would you compound that? So it's constantly evolving. You know, the understanding writ large of human performance has really exploded exponentially in the last 20 years. And you know, we try and stay on top of it as much as we can. We've had a great relationship with Sean Arndt. He was the director of Rutgers University's Human Performance Research Center. He got poached by University of South Carolina, Columbia, which runs widely regarded as the world's premier human performance research center. So we've relied on him for a lot of his insights and others in the profession. You know, we certainly reach beyond our core clientele of security, law enforcement, and military to find answers to the questions. Why does this happen to this person, but it wouldn't happen to this person? Why in this circumstance can somebody do X, but not Y? Because for us, again, it comes down to, we've got a limited amount of time to train these students, and we want to give them factual information and skills that are going to be applicable to the situations they're likely to find themselves in. This is not a Hollywood movie. J-turns are cool, even ramming cars. We used to run courses, immediate action courses. I can't remember the last time we ran one, and that was, you know, J-turns and ramming and pit and counter pit. Well, with collision avoidance technology on modern vehicles, all of those maneuvers are moot. The vehicle will not allow you to make contact.
Yeah, that's not fun.
No. So you could train somebody, and that's the problem, right? As we say, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your training. So if I've trained somebody to ram a car, and now they get blocked in and they try and ram it, and their car's equipped with collision avoidance, it's over. You're going to stop 3 to 5 foot before the attacker. It's great in an accident. It's absolutely life-saving. But in a deliberate attempt to stop the vehicle, it can absolutely work against you. And a lot of our training focuses on building that recognition and understanding among our students, because as you can imagine, most of them are driving leading edge vehicles. You know, most of them don't have a vehicle, at least their work vehicles are not more than 2 years old. A lot of them are getting in new vehicles every year. So they're having to adjust to the technology, which drives us on the training side to continue to evolve to meet that challenge.
How do you keep it together?
CEOs in a, no, I was gonna say, you don't see CEOs in a, you know, 2008 Corolla.
Well,
No, we've had some that we've moved to keep a low profile. We've done that, but let's just say they were none too impressed by the ride.
That's hilarious. See, we just busted a whole other secret out. We're terrible. We're exposing everything now. There's going to be Corollas all over with people like trying to scope out who's in them.
Well, it's interesting. One of our clients several years ago, they were looking for a low-key vehicle for their CEO, and we suggested a minivan, but get it outfitted as a mobile office. Yeah. And then the protection detail leader scoffed at it at first, and then he started to think about it, bought the idea to the CEO. To this day, every time they renew their fleet, they get a minivan outfitted as a mobile office because it's so popular.
Plus, all he has to do is watch Get Shorty, and he'll realize that minivans are the greatest cars ever.
That's a great movie. I love that movie. Not necessarily for the minivan.
No, but just the movie in general. When I was in college, my car was just a lemon, and they would loan me, like, dealership was kind enough to let me borrow a car. And sometimes I got a Jeep, and that was cool. But they loaned me a minivan. And at first we're like, seriously? But when you're 21 years old and you're deciding to drive to South Carolina with all your friends and then you want to pile everybody, greatest car ever. This has been marketed wrong for decades. Best car ever.
I think if you recall, as a matter of fact, didn't you guys just have the film booker for the Mahoning drive-in
Yes.
Yeah,
theater? Right?
absolutely.
So the minivan is the perfect, if we're doing carloads,
Yes.
right? Take
Exactly.
the minivan, you know?
1000%.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
See, that CEO's got it all figured out.
Now, if we're gonna bust out secrets, I'll share a little secret.
Yes.
When I first met my wife many years ago, I won't give you the number. I said to her, we were at a party. I said, "Hey, you want to go for a ride in my Vet?" And she's like, "You have a Vet?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a Chevy Chevette." So you want to talk about
Amazing. Did she say yes, or did you have to keep wooing her?
No, she said yes.
I would have said yes too.
There you
I would have
go,
been like,
yeah.
"That's clever. I'm in."
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So in these scenarios or real life situations, these ambushes, what is the overarching protocol or plan? Is it to get away from that situation, or is it to try to kind of take out or use the vehicle to squash the ambush or something to that effect?
Depends on the circumstance. So the majority of our clients are responsible for protecting others, whether they're private sector or public sector or even military. The majority of our clients are involved in close or executive protection. So now you have a legal responsibility to remove that person from risk. So you're not going to necessarily try and defeat the attack. In that instance, it's get the car moving or keep the car moving, right? Because if you stop, now you are literally a sitting target, right? So movement provides some security. It's not the be all end all. And oftentimes drivers mistake that movement being safety and security with driving fast, which may not be the answer. Hardest thing to get students to recognize is when you're under fire in this ambush situation, you may actually have to slow down to gain what you need, which is control over that vehicle, which allows you to control the situation. But it is, if it's at a stop, it's get it moving and then keep it moving. If you're moving, do everything you possibly can to keep it moving. Now, conversely, some of the students we train have different responsibilities, different mission profiles, and we are teaching them techniques where they would use the vehicle either as a tool to stop another vehicle, technology notwithstanding, or use that vehicle sort of as their stronghold to create some defensible space and then launch the counteroffensive from that defensible space. That's a program actually that we're promulgating now throughout the U.S. law enforcement community with our patrol vehicle ambush survival skills instructor course. Huge uptick in ambush attacks on police officers over the last couple of years. And the majority of those are occurring in vehicles. So now we're taking some of the things that we've taught government and military personnel over the years and translating that into techniques that will work for law enforcement officers who have a different set of legal constraints they have to operate in, obviously, but we still want them to be able to effectively counter an ambush when they're in their vehicle. Unlike our students who are providing security for somebody, the average police officer can't just get out of the kill zone and keep going. Sure, they've got to get out of that kill zone, but now they've got to be able to defend that space and then, of course, neutralize the attackers. Man. So there's a broad range of techniques. There's quite a bit of crossover between the evasive driving and then the offensive driving or the counter ambush style driving. There's some crossover for sure, but there are also some vast differences.
Can anybody take any of these courses, or do you need to be kind of shepherded in by an employer or by a governmental agency?
Well, technically, sure, anybody can.
I mean, it's price prohibitive, obviously, for someone to come in off the street.
Right. And so the vast majority of work we do are custom client specific courses. So obviously, not anybody can walk off the street and take those courses, but we do 10 open enrollment protective evasive driving courses a year. And we typically do one accident avoidance program a year for young drivers. Now, the accident avoidance program is open to anybody. It's typically filled by the spouses and kids of our professional students. And that's not to say one of the open enrollment protective evasive driving courses, say, Luke, you could say, oh, I'm a writer and I'm into all this crime fiction and whatnot, might be helpful. We've actually had authors who've taken our course to get some insight to help their writing. But in order to come in, if you're not a professional, a bona fide law enforcement, security, government, or military professional, you would have to submit a letter of good standing from a local law enforcement agency, either city police, county sheriff, or whatnot, and send us a copy of your driving abstract so we can make sure you don't have any reckless driving or DWI infractions on your record. And then we will allow you to attend, but as you noted, it is not inexpensive to do that. But we do on occasion have some folks who do feel, because of their circumstances, or sometimes it's the locales they work or live in, that this would be helpful for them. So we're certainly, again, our mission being to make better drivers and recognizing that our techniques do apply very broadly. We really don't want to deny anybody the opportunity as long as they have a legitimate concern and they are a citizen in good standing.
This would be so fascinating if I could just stop crying because of all of the yelling and loud noises. I think that'd be fascinating.
Well,
Yeah, the loud noises would get me.
first off,
Yeah.
there's very little yelling in our classes, except in our final exercise to
Okay,
apply.
commanding with your voice.
But as a matter of fact, Luke, we are right up the road from you. You're in Bucks County. We're right there at Pocono Raceway. In 2023, I expect to see you in one of our open enrollment courses as our guest. And Heidi, if you can make it out from Detroit, you guys.
Oh, I can make it out.
We'll be publicly releasing our schedule for 2023 here in a couple of weeks. When we do, look on that schedule at the protective evasive driving courses, pick a 3-day course and come as our guest.
Oh my gosh,
That would
that
be-
is amazing. Incredible. Thank you. We will
Yes,
do
thank you.
that.
We will take you up
We
on
will
this.
absolutely take you up on that.
I absolutely hope you do, because
Amazing.
one is you're gonna look at driving. If history holds true, you will look at driving completely differently than you do now, not in a bad way. And you are going to do things in a car that you never imagined possible. And you're going to have the time of your life doing it.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing.
You will absolutely, as we tell students right up front, there's going to be laughing. We're either going to laugh with you, at you, or near you. The choice is yours. You'll be
That's
laughing.
fine. Probably all three in my
Yes.
case.
That's what we like. We like to hit the whole gambit, right?
Yeah.
We have found our exercises can be stressful enough. We know when to apply stress, how to apply it as a learning tool. We don't need to yell at you. We don't need to scream. You all understand, you're adults. You understand what has to be done. We like to get you nice and relaxed, ramp it up in the exercise, come back, laugh a little bit about it, and then ramp you up again, get you in another exercise.
Love it. Luke and I'll yell at each other.
Yes, exactly.
But we won't carry you up in the car together.
No.
Yeah.
People who work together, people who are in relationships together, do not get to drive together. Even
Yeah,
when we do,
That's probably sage advice in day-to-day life as well.
Yeah.
well,
Everyone should always be separated in a car.
probably
Yes.
a lot more cars on the road then. So
Well,
that
that's true. There's that problem then.
may not address our climate change goals, but
Well,
at least address
yeah.
our-
Yeah.
True. Good point.
Is there one good piece of advice you would have for people who want to drive safer and better? And I'm going to say we can set aside put down the phone because that's the obvious one.
Right. Following distance, right? The more time and distance you have between you and the person in front of you, the better off you are. Secondary to that, or maybe on the same plane as that, look as far as you can see when you're driving. People tend to just look at the car in front of them and then wonder, why is this person hitting their brakes? But if you were looking 2 or 3 car lengths ahead, you may already understand what's happening or about to happen and be able to adjust for it. So I know you asked for one, I gave you two. Little bonus there.
We will
hey,
take
we'll
it.
take
Thank
a
you.
bonus. We
Yes.
love it.
And
My mother will be
following
very
distances-
pleased
What
about the
was that?
following distance. My mother, when I was 16, was always like, you follow too close, which I don't do now, I might add. But for some reason, she recently brought it up again. I was like, have you driven in a car with me in 20 years? Because I don't do that anymore, but she'll be very happy that you said that because she's an avid listener.
Well, it's amazing how experience changes so many things we do, particularly
Right.
driving, right? You
Yes.
have an accident, a couple of near misses, all of a sudden your perspective changes quite a bit. And, you know, our goal is to change people's perspectives before they have those negative experiences.
Right.
For more information about the Vehicle Dynamics Institute and to find out which courses they are currently offering, check out their website, vehicledynamics.com.
You can check us out on all the various socials. Be sure to visit our website and don't forget to leave us a review.
Today's show is produced by myself and Heidi Hedquist. Our reluctant producers are John Sauvé and Sandy Stone. Our willing producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our intern is Zach Jackson. This one's for Philippe. Thanks for joining us. Flash, we're coming home.
Nigel, is that you? Are you here, Nigel?